Recently, I released a new track. It's an instrumental orchestral music, kind of cinematic, and here I'm gonna tell you about its creation. So what goals I set for myself in this track? The first one was to capture the process of spring arriving. If you ever been to Ukraine in spring, you know how the climate changed from March to May. Especially starting from late February through mid-March, everything is quite gloomy. Cold, grey skies, and it feels like the world is in black and white. By April, this starts to change and there are more sunny days. And finally, by May, spring fully arrives with moderate temperature and blooming trees. These transitions are what I wanted to show through music. That was the first goal. The second goal was to use only free or affordable libraries from Spitfire Audio. So all the instruments in this track which you'll hear are from Spitfire Audio. So this is my project. As you can see, it's divided into 3 parts with this small block here. Each part can be seen as a separate spring month, and this block is a coda, like a logical conclusion of whole track. Notice the tempo. In the March section we start with the tempo 137, then it gradually increases to 140. Through the April section the tempo steadily rises from 140 to 147. For the first part of May the tempo stays at 147, and at the culmination I raise the tempo by 3 more beats. Then in the coda we gradually slow down and finish this track at 127 BPM. So tempo changes quite drastically. Why would I do this? First, because I can. Second, to show how everything starts moving faster because spring is coming and the whole nature is coming alive. And now let's see how this track was composed. For a while I was jamming on the piano looking for a melancholic melody, and I settled on this one. Sounds like f***ing March 1st. This part will loop until the culmination. For the piano I used the Jungle Box piano library. I slightly narrowed its stereo field and compressed it using the LA2A from UAD. As a reverb I used an impulse response of some random hole. To enhance this drawn-out very slow vibe I added some strings from Labs, applying delay and radical reverb, and compressed them quite heavily to bring out those effects. From the second half of March, I add some percussion like a slow heartbeat. Yeah, it's very cliché, sorry. This is cinematic percussion. I also equipped a bit with something that looks like Neve 1073. And so we go to April section. Much more elements appear here, more percussion, and I control them by automation of the high-pass filter. But something truly interesting happens in the string section. It's a fairly common technique in cinematic music, but I wanted the elements to appear one by one, building up to the culmination. For that, I found this part. And also loop it with the different instruments, developing it like this. An instrument appears, plays the part, and then becomes just a part of the chord. In its place, the next instrument comes in, plays the part, and also joins the chord. And so on. I mean, each instrument greets us with these notes and then takes its place in the mix. Kind of like when a bush blooms in April and we walk by it, say, oh look, that bush bloomed, and then move on, no longer paying attention to it. This is what I wanted to show in this part. So these all are free BBC Symphony Orchestra, except these 2, which are epic strings. We can ignore basses, they just play in harmony. And the first to appear are the cellos. Here they play the part and then go to the harmony support. And the violas take their place. They play this line as well and then join the chord. then the violence, then more violence, all the way to the culmination. Also remember that during this whole time the tempo is rising from 140 to 147. In sum, all this April section sounds like this. I leave only strings and percussions. Here we arrive to the culmination where everything that's been building up finally should explode. Like a beautiful spring morning with a warm sunny blue sky and blooming nature. So the repeating strings now play a more lively part. The lead violin takes their melody. The piano helps them. And woodwinds. Another string section. Brasses. And percussion as well. And while this feels like the culmination, I wanted to extend it a bit. And how can you do this without extra instruments? That is right, just bump the lead part up an octave. I increase the tempo a little, and here we go. Skip the coda, you can listen to it yourself and jump to the mixing session. And honestly, there are not much excitement or at least useful techniques here, because almost for everything I use Acoustic Audio Gold 5. It's an emulation of various NIF consoles because I love acoustic audio, and even though I have worked with real NIF consoles in studios only 5 or 7 times way back before COVID, I like using it for orchestral pieces. So yeah, I mostly just used acoustic audio. Let's take a look at the mastering. I started my mastering with UAD's Fairchild compressor, but then I felt that something isn't right and I decided to change it, and I settled on We Come From Waves, which also emulates NIF. Some might find that surprising, and me either, but I like how it works, especially here. Then there is an EQ from Acoustic Audio where I boost the lows by 3 dB and the highs by 4 dB. I got this from Andrew Sheff's template. He uses Pultec from UAD for this, but I prefer the low end in Acoustic Audio. Finally, last in the chain, Isotopazone, where I use dynamic EQ to remove rumble and harsh upper mid frequencies. Then I do a little mid-side EQing, then a slight multiband compression. As we can see, it's all around 1 dB and only on the culmination. Then I work with the stereo field, the low end is all in mono and the rest whatever. Then mid-side saturation, one more EQ, and the maximizer that gently controls the peaks. I wanted to keep the dynamic range of this track, so I did not squash anything significantly. At the same time, I get my 9 LUFS at the culmination. which is all I need for this track. And that's it. You can listen to this track on all streaming platforms. You can find the links in the description below. Let me know in the comments whether this video was useful for you. What do you think about this track? What do you think about my workflow? Also, subscribe, like and share. See you guys.